Before we get started this evening, I just wanted to express my anger and my sorrow regarding the events in Atlanta earlier this week and the rising violence and hatred being shown to Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in recent weeks. I do not stand for it. I do not accept it. I do not believe in it. And anything that I can do to stop it, I will do. I will be making a donation to the GoFundMe for Stop Asian Hate at gofundme.com/f/support-AAPI-community-fund, the information of which will be in the info of this episode, and I implore you to do the same. It is time to stop Asian hate and allow these people to live their lives as they deserve to, freely and without prejudice. Thank you. And welcome to episode number 40 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio. My name is Jason Fanelli, and I am the Esports and Gaming Insider for Fox PHL The Gambler, and we have quite an episode for you this evening. Now, I had advertised this episode with Sean Brace a little bit differently than it's going to play out. We are not going to talk about the Activision Blizzard layoffs anymore because we had some breaking news at 4 o'clock on a Thursday, just before I started recording this episode. And we're going to talk about that with a special guest. First time on the show and someone I have wanted to speak to for a very, very long time. And this is the perfect topic to do it. So you can look forward to that. But before we do anything else, let's start the show off how we always do with the 6 in 60 seconds. Activision Blizzard has announced multiple layoffs across the company, including 50 in the esports division, calling the move for a new business model that is, quote, less dependent on live events. The Valorant Masters 1 finals are this weekend, with FaZe facing Sentinels in the winners, 100 Thieves versus Gen G, and Team Envy versus Luminosity in the losers. The Capcom Pro Tour 2021 was announced with 32 online events in 19 territories, and each winner competing in Capcom Cup 8 in 2022. Fortnite has gone primal in Chapter 2 Season 6, adding crafting and animals to hunt, the Battle Pass including Lara Croft from Tomb Raider and Raven from Teen Titans. Sony is giving away 10 PS4, PS5 games for free as part of the Play at Home 2021 initiative, with Horizon Zero Dawn and The Witness among them. And finally, Jade Raymond's new studio, Haven, is already working on a new PlayStation-exclusive IP with specific details not yet announced. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. And as always, the 6 in 60 seconds are brought to you by our sponsor here at Cheesesteaks and Controllers, Ghost Shaver. Ghost Shaver is designed to feel like an extension of your arm, allowing all users to reach anywhere on the head, face, or body. The precision cutting system gives you a close and smooth shave every single time, with 5 different rotary flex-action super thin blades and a patented handheld design that fits into the palm of your hand precisely. It's easy to use and easy to clean. That's Ghost Shaver, shave above the rest. Find it now at ghostshaver.com. Yes, folks, those are your 6 in 60 seconds. Interesting week so far in the news. The big thing I mentioned that we're talking about in segment number 2 was not even part of that. We will get into that in just a second. But first, I want to talk about another thing that I did not mention in the 6 in 60 seconds. Square Enix, which most people know for Final Fantasy, but also for their Western division, has games like Tomb Raider and Deus Ex and others, got into the business of update-based live streams, where they've decided, like a Nintendo Direct style video with upcoming projects that they are working on, called Square Enix Presents. And the very first one was Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So I thought we would take a minute to run down everything that was revealed at the show. A very good first effort, I would say. Not so much in the content, but in the presentation, I thought it was very well made, even if the stuff that was in there was a little, I wouldn't call it underwhelming, but maybe not as in-depth or strong as folks would have hoped. It started with an excellent cinematic trailer for Outriders before deep diving into the game's backstory and classes. My excitement for that game went through the roof thanks to this. And with the release date confirmed for April 1st, there's only good things to look forward to with Outriders. Next was a segment on the Tomb Raider 25th anniversary. If you would believe it, Lara Croft is 25 years old this year. They will be celebrating by re-releasing the full reboot trilogy, starting with 2013's Tomb Raider, and then 2015's Rise, and 2018's Shadow of the Tomb Raider, called the Definitive Survivor Trilogy. They will also be releasing a cookbook, and they also announced a couple collaborations, one with Ghost Recon Breakpoint that they didn't get into specifics for, and another with Fortnite, which, as I mentioned in the 6 and 60, Lara Croft is part of the Battle Pass, and they are also adding Croft Manor to Fortnite's creative section, which is a pretty cool addition as well. I would almost prefer that Croft Manor be put on the map itself somewhere. I feel like that would be pretty cool, but it kind of goes against the theme of Season 6, the primal theme, so I kind of get why they wouldn't do that. Next section was about mobile games coming from Square Enix. First, Just Cause Mobile, the Just Cause games all about wreaking havoc and blowing up as much stuff as you can. Hitman Sniper Assassins, a new mobile game based on the Hitman franchise. And a Space Invaders AR mobile game, sort of like Space Invaders Go, where you'll be fighting Space Invaders in real life, in the real world. That is an interesting idea that I did not consider myself. At first, it looked like Space Invaders was teaming with Enhance, the team behind Tetris Effect, for a Space Invaders game in that ilk, which would also be awesome. But it's more of an AR mobile game, which is interesting. Definitely a cool idea, and one that I am excited to take a look at. I hope it's just not one of those free-to-play games where you can only play for a while and then it locks itself behind a paywall, because those stink, and I don't want to see them anymore. And then we got to a section of highlighting Taito games. Old school gamers will remember the name Taito from back in the day, owning franchises like Darius and Bubble Bobble. Well, a new Darius and a new Bubble Bobble were announced today. I can't believe that I'm saying new Bubble Bobble in the year of our Lord 2021, but here we are. Also a brand new game in Toho, which is a bullet hell action game where you're playing, basically like, think about Defender back in the day, but with a lot more shooting and a lot more bullets going on. So that was definitely an interesting surprise there. And then we get to a part that caused a lot of folks worried going into this presentation, worried about what might actually come of it, worried about what might actually be included in this part, and that is the Marvel Avengers part of this by Crystal Dynamics. Marvel Avengers has been sort of slow in its first 6 months. It came out back in September, and which was delayed from, I believe, June or April, I think it was, of 2020. Down to September, and then when it came out, it had boasted all of this post-launch content. It talked about Spider-Man, it talked about Black Panther, it talked about Kate Bishop and Hawkeye, it talked about all kinds of things, but nothing really happened. We finally got Kate Bishop in December, I believe it was, and Hawkeye came out today along with the PS5 Xbox Series X upgrade. So people were worried. People were worried about the future of the game and whether they would keep supporting it. They definitely wanted it to succeed and not go the way of, say, Anthem over at EA. No shade to them. It's just the truth, unfortunately. And one of the big things, there was a great video that came out yesterday by Greg Miller over at Kinda Funny talking about what the game needs. And one of the very first things he talked about was a roadmap. And wouldn't you know it, the first thing they showed was a 2021 content roadmap. Talks about things that are coming in the spring and the summer and beyond, and all kinds of additional content. The spring is showing a Tachyon anomaly, it's called, where you can combine heroes in special Tachyon missions. Red Room Takeover with themed Harm Room content and new outfits for the heroes. A Cosmic Cube section in the summertime, which is a new villain sector where you confront the unchecked power of the Cosmic Cube. Wasteland Patrol is a new Warzone mission-type patrol mode with new war zones and assignments within the Wasteland region. The big update, however, is a brand new expansion coming in the summer and beyond, War for Wakanda, which will add Black Panther, new hero outfits, a new biome in the Wakandan jungle, a new story arc, new villains, including Claw with a K, that's K-L-A-W, power level cap increase, all kinds of stuff. That's the big one. That's where all this stuff is leading to, and honestly, that's what people were looking for. This is heartening. This is good. This is exactly what people who want this game to succeed were looking for. Is it enough? We'll be the judge of that once War for Wakanda comes out, or even further, on December 31st, when the 2021 content roadmap has been completed. When we see all the Omega level threat missions, when we see all the multiplayer Mega Hives, the balance tuning, the gear, the progression, all that stuff. When we see this stuff come out and we see the breadth of the 2021, then we'll make a judgment as to whether or not this was worth it. Now, were the delays caused by COVID or the pandemic? Probably. Would they admit it? I should hope so, if that's actually the case. But regardless, if this content is good and people start to come back to this game, I think the slow start can be forgiven. As long as it avoids going the way of Anthem and instead goes the way of, say, No Man's Sky, just don't take as long to do so, I think Avengers has a future. And that's more than I could say about it yesterday. I do plan on jumping in on PS5. I started it on PS4. I did not finish the campaign. So I would like to jump back in on PS5 with the Operation Hawkeye and the Kate Bishop stuff and give it another shot. I would like to try and see if it can win me over with some new content. And, the original content that I never finished. So I will definitely be giving this game a go. And this content roadmap gives me hope that I'll want to stay in it. And that's if I can, pull myself away from Fortnite for longer than 5 minutes. After the Avengers was a new trailer for Balan Wonderworld, which is the game that kind of looks like Nights into Dreams from the Sega Saturn. Demo came out that seemed a little underwhelming, and it sounds like a day one patch is going to address a lot of that stuff that they were worried about, that fans were worried about or players were worried about, which is good because the game launches next week, so they don't really have a lot of time to patch things up. I'm glad they're doing it. Then we got to the bit of the anchor of the show, which was the highlight of the Life is Strange franchise. One of the big things they advertised going in to this was an addition to Life is Strange. And they introduced a brand new game in the franchise, Life is Strange True Colors. A full-on trailer and deep dive into the story and the setting and the people you're going to be talking to. Spent a good amount of time, I'd say about 10 minutes or so, on this new game, True Colors. We met, I think her name is MXM Moon, who is playing the singing vocals for the main character, Alex Chen, which is awesome. And they showed a little clip of her playing Creep by Radiohead, which is beautiful version of that. I really, really did enjoy that, even if the placement in the trailer was a little bit weird. But the fact that Life is Strange fans have a brand new game, True Colors, coming. It is ditching the episodic format, which is very cool, which is coming out as one big game. The previous Life is Strange games came out as episodic content, kind of like a Telltale game or something like that. So you get episode 1, a couple months later, 2, 3, all the way to the end. This one's not doing that. This is going to be one big adventure. So you figure, based on the episodic content before, if it's a whole big game, you're probably looking at 8 to 10 hours of content, depending on completion and things like that. Very, very cool reveal there. Life is Strange, not really my cup of tea. I never played the games. I would give them a try. I'll try anything once. And I might even get a chance, actually, to play the original once again, because also was announced Life is Strange, the first one, and the prequel, Life is Strange Before the Storm, are being remastered to launch in the fall. Just in time for True Colors to come out on September 10th. So this fall we'll be getting a heaping helping of Life is Strange, which is great. In fact, one of the characters from Before the Storm, Stephanie, is a character in True Colors that can be a love interest. So I guess it makes sense that they would remaster the game that she came from so people can be more familiar with her when the new game comes out. Or they meet her in the new game, they say, hey, I want to learn more about her, and they play the old game for the context. Either way, it's a good idea. But this was not the final announcement of the presentation. No, that went to Project Athia, a game that was first shown during one of the PlayStation 5 live streams last year called Project Athia Working Title. It did not have an actual name yet, but all it showed was some very cool visuals and a dramatic fight against a big monster. We got a little more about that game today. It is scheduled for 2022. The actual name of it is Forspoken. And we got a first look at some in-game gameplay, some traversal in the big open world, a little bit of combat, a cutscene with a big dragon. I can't say the full quote because this airs on live radio. But this one was really, really cool. Some of those visuals in the traversal especially really knocked me back. That was an awesome showing by this Project Athia, and I hope they can keep that going in full development, because if that game comes out looking like that and performing like that, we are in for an absolute treat. So Project Athia is definitely getting higher and higher on my my most anticipated lists. The more I see of it, now it's not till 2022, so there are some games to come out in the meantime. But definitely Project Athia, or now Forspoken. I have to start saying Forspoken on my list. Square Enix, man, they're killing it. They are killing it recently. This was a very good presentation with a lot of different things for a lot of different people. The Outriders at the very beginning was a huge, huge boon for me. Plus, it coming to Xbox Game Pass on launch will make me want to play it instantly. If it's free with an asterisk, it's for me. The asterisk being the subscription to Xbox Game Pass. Yeah, I mean, but then there's all the other things they didn't announce. So this one was definitely Western focused. Avengers, Life is Strange, things like that. The Eastern side of Square Enix with Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, or Remake Intergrade, Final Fantasy 16, Neo: The World Ends With You. They're knocking it out of the park recently as Square Enix. They really are firing on all cylinders. And if they can have a big year in 2021, and then go right into 2022 with Forspoken already waiting in the wings. So you're looking good, Square Enix. I was very, very impressed with this show today. Not all of the content was for me, as I said, and it may have underwhelmed a few other folks, but the presentation itself was good. The transitions and the visuals were good, and I am excited to see what they do with this format in the future. So good on you, Square Enix. Square Enix Presents was a success in my book, and I am very much looking forward to the next one that you teased for the summertime. Now, once again, normally I would put an on tap right here, but unfortunately, there's only really one game to talk about coming out this week, and that's Story of Seasons, Pioneers of Olive Town. So if you're a Story of Seasons fan, you got a new game coming to the Switch. But that's it. That's the only really big title to talk about, so I don't really feel like I'm going to put it on tap here. That's just how it is. So, moving on. All right, our second segment of the night is one I'm very, very excited about because it's coming out of left field, and I did not say anything about it to anyone. I didn't really have a chance because the news broke at Thursday at 4 o'clock, and this interview was booked at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, so things are just moving really fast here at Cheesesteaks and Controllers, and I absolutely love it. So, Sony dropped the bomb by announcing they are buying Evo. I didn't think you could buy Evo. I didn't know Evo was for sale. I might have thrown a number in. But Evolution Championship Series now belongs to Sony and a joint esports venture called RTS, which doesn't really make much sense to me because RTS is real-time strategy and it's fighting it, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. And with me to talk about it is one of the premier podcast hosts in all of video games, and dare I say podcasts in general. Spawn on me, coming up on nearly 400 episodes. I have a ways to go here at episode 40. My guest now is the host, Kahlief Adams. Kahlief, how the hell are you, my friend?
Bam, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be rocking with you here and back on the radio. I'm loving it, and excited to talk about Evo and all the goodness that you're all talking about with this episode and everything going on.
Yeah, man, but first things first, you did say back on the radio. This is not your first foray in the airwaves. Give us a little background on where you come from, my friend.
Oh, my goodness. So way back in the day when there were things called, AM, FM radio stations. No, I'm just joking. They're still around.
That's what we are. That's what this is.
They're still here and pushing out the waves. I started off in college radio back in the Bronx, back in New York. Shout out to Lehman College back there. We had a hip hop show called Buried in the Basement. which we were, because we were in the basement of the then Student Life building playing hip hop tracks back there. And then, you know, fast forward almost 6 years later is when we got back to the radio with Spawn on Me out here in Portland on X-Ray, which is just a fantastic X-Ray FM, which is a fantastic radio station out here out in Portland, Oregon. So it's amazing to be back on the radio. I miss it. I missed having that collaboration between great conversation and music, which is beautiful and things I love. And also it makes you not cuss. So it's one of those things where you have to understand how to play it so the FCC ninjas don't come and snatch you up out of the sky. So I'm excited to be rocking here with you, and it's always great to be able to have good conversations like this.
That is the truth. Not being able to fly off the handle when you really want to with some topics is it's a nice way to censor yourself, especially if you're a father. Or around, like, I have 2 little girls, 4 and 2.
Oh,
so
wow.
This has been a great training mechanism on how not to curse. That is a very good point. But Sony and Evo, can you believe it? Sony dropping a bomb on us. Let's bring the blog up here and take a read to it. Today we are thrilled to announce the next chapter in the story of PlayStation and Evo, the world's largest and longest running fighting game tournament. Sony Interactive Entertainment has teamed up with RTS to acquire Evo through a joint venture partnership. First things first, did you see this coming? And if you did, can I have the lottery tickets for tomorrow?
I mean, I will do my best Back to the Future and get you who's going to win in the next World Series to do that. No one saw this coming. This is not a thing that I thought people were going to be waking up to or having conversations about today, especially with kind of most of the conversation in the space kind of being around other companies and the work that they've been doing. This is a big deal. And I don't think people really understand just how big this thing is, because you have the flagship, best known, biggest video game competition in the world when it comes to the fighting game community now attaching itself, or not even attaching itself, being a part of one of the biggest video game companies on the planet, which is monstrous to know that this is a thing. It's huge in terms of that conversation. So, you know, Sony has had a pretty strong hold on that part of the fighting game space, because most of the times when you go to a fighting game tournament, most of the times people are playing on PlayStations, and it's because of a couple of different things. One is because of the way that, you know, fight sticks have been in the space for a long time, and they've had a lot of compatibility there on PlayStation platforms. And to be fair, you know, a lot of times, you know, because of the way that not only pad players play, but the way that stick players play, from a kind of nuts and bolts perspective, you know, Sony PlayStation controllers were just easier and better when it came to using a D-pad for most of the games that you wind up playing. And you wind up seeing in a very specific way, you know, during the era of the PS4, because since we've moved on to the PS5, and also most people can't get a PS5.
That's right.
The you know, they had baked in competitions that were on the PlayStation 4 for a lot of the games that I love, including Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. So it is wild to see that they have now pulled this in, and now this is going to be something that is directly tied to the PlayStation brand in a big way. This is huge. This is huge news.
It really is. And, you know, they've been kind of teasing it forever indirectly, like kind of holding it in front of our noses with these weekly invitationals that they've been having, the PS4 tournaments in fighting games, Mortal Kombat 11, Soul Calibur 6, I want to say Unicler as well, Under Night in Birth. They've been just doing these little YouTube-only tournaments. I know Ketchup and Mustard have been doing some commentary for the Mortal Kombat 11 ones, and slowly but surely building their fighting game content. So and when I first saw it, I was like, wow, that's really shocking. But then when I sat and thought about it, they've been putting a little bit of time into this. They've been really trying to build a fighting game fan base, more so than they already had. I'm the kind of guy where if I think of a certain genre of games, I tend to play that genre on a certain system. So like sports games, with the exception of Madden, I'm big on PlayStation. Madden I've always played on Xbox for some reason. First-person shooters, Xbox. Even franchises, Mass Effect, Xbox, Assassin's Creed, Xbox, Watch Dogs, PlayStation. Fighting games, with the exception of Smash Brothers and Killer Instinct, PlayStation. Always has been since Street Fighter Alpha on PlayStation 1, the first PlayStation fighting game I owned. Tekken 2 was a huge part of that. Tekken 3 also. So PlayStation being the one to bring EVO back to prominence makes perfect sense to me. And they've been planting the seeds, like I said, for a very, very long time. Have you checked out any of their open tournaments?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm a huge MK11 fan, so I'm religiously watching Ketchup and Mustard kind of go through.
They're great. They are awesome.
I mean I love them. Seeing them and Ultra David and Evan Hashimoto, doing a bunch of commentary there. Like I'm a big MK fan, so I'm watching that probably at least 3 or 4 times a week. With watching NA East, NA West, and then Oceania was the other time that I was watching the other day.
Wow.
And then Liga from down in Brazil, like I'm watching literally all the MK stuff that they're doing currently, and it's been great. It makes so much sense now, knowing how much that they have connected themselves not only to that game but to the fighting game community in that way. That it's a weird announcement to see happen. But then when you think about what they've been doing and what they've been building up, it kind of just makes sense.
Sure.
The real interesting part about this is not necessarily just the fact that they're going to be doing this in this bigger and broader kind of more expansive way. It's now, what does this do for the competition when it winds up happening, when we can actually go back out into the world again? Mm-hmm. Which to me is going to be really interesting to see. Is this now just going to be PlayStation branded everywhere? Probably. Is there going to be more deals that we wind up seeing from the game space connected to, fighting games on the PlayStation platforms? Probably. What does that mean? I think the other part of this that is the biggest and most exciting part of this conversation is the fighting game community, and especially the esports space within the FGC, has had a really difficult time when it comes to making money.
Yes,
it is one of the hardest things for this side of the fence to do. We see it in League of Legends, we see it in Dota, we see it in now Valorant. I'm sure is going to be having some big pots in the space for the money that they would potentially make in that space. Now we finally, hopefully, will see FGC fighters getting their actual due when it comes to prize pots in this bigger way. So that's going to be wild to see what that means from a production standpoint, from a money standpoint, and from a competitor standpoint.
Yeah, and bigger the pots get, the more players you'll get, and depending on the games that are there, that could mean tournaments in the multiple thousands. Let's talk about a game that now its future in EVO is in question, and that's Super Smash Brothers. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate 2019 set a record for EVO competition registration, somewhere in the, I believe it was 39. I have to look that number up again, but it was 3,200 players in one tournament. Nintendo gave them a controller for their efforts, but that's a whole other story.
Right.
But those attendance numbers could be now huge across the board, because if you start bringing in bigger pots, you start getting more players. If you start getting more players, you start getting more games too. Mm-hmm. This could be a huge resurgence for the fighting game genre in general, which has seen a bit of a slowdown in the pandemic, especially in online play. There's no reason why fighting games should not have been doing online tournaments, except for the fact that fighting game online netcode is notoriously crap. And it bit them in the behind. Now they're talking about rollback netcode. Guilty Gear Strive is going to get it. They were able to implement it into Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus. It's interesting to me that now it seems like fighting games are finally figuring it out. And it took a pandemic to do it, unfortunately. What do you think the future of EVO looks like and in the fighting game community as a whole? Where do you think we're going from here?
I mean, it can only get bigger. I remember the last times that they had a kind of in-person EVO, we were right on the precipice of something really big. I felt like you had the big stage moment. They were doing stuff on ESPN2 or
That's
ESPN3. Right. They weren't on the Ocho,
but
they're not on the Ocho. But it was amazing to see, what the ideas of where they could have gotten would be. It was interesting also to hear Stephen Totillo today, head of Kotaku, talk about Nintendo's attachment to this via Smash, and he says, a representative shared. They said, as for Smash, Nintendo tells them that the founders are wishing them well. And a rep said that we will continue to assess Evo and other opportunities as they plan for future online and offline Super Smash Brothers tournament activity. Again, when you have one of the biggest companies on the planet still not having their online stuff together and still trying to figure out what they're going to do in a post-pandemic world, that leaves room for other games to come in and take those spots in a real way. But I think Evo is just going to continue to get bigger. They had some trouble from a personal personnel standpoint last year. They had some
big time. Some
allegations, towards one of the owners and one of the founders of Evo, which I still don't know if they've ever rectified that kind of black eye on the conversation. But from what esports is trying to do, where esports is going, how do you build this thing out? It feels like currently, if we really are being honest about it, the only one that is kind of lagging behind in terms of getting its actual due is the fighting game space.
That's correct.
And this may be the way that they kind of get over that hump.
And I am of the opinion, and I've said this multiple times on this podcast, that fighting games could be, and you may agree with me on this, the number one esport in the world.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the most digestible for the casual fan.
Yep.
I feel like it's the easiest to gain information just by walking by and looking at a screen.
Yep.
And it has the UFC WWE appeal where you could build storylines based on, rivalries. Think about this. Think about if there's a UFC style fight card, not unlike what they did for Capcom Cup or what the WUFL is doing, but they're city-based teams.
Oh, yeah.
You have your Tekken player, you have a Street Fighter player, you have a Smash Brothers player, you have your Soul Calibur player, you have a guy that can flex between different games, like a Sonic Fox or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you just get them all together in one room in Call of Duty League or Overwatch League style weekend matchups. You have them round robin, or you have them, this team versus this team in a big team battle. You have rankings, you have tiebreakers, all that, and then you have a playoff. That would be insanity. And I just don't understand what the problem is with the fighting game community, other than obviously in the pandemic, the online being a problem.
Yeah.
Why they can't figure this out? Like I don't get it.
Well, I think it's a couple of different things. Where one, it feels like to a certain extent, because there is team structure in a lot of the other games.
Sure. Yeah.
That lends to an organizing body or a team member or a team lead having say, and an organization having say. But it's weird because there have been fighting game organizations for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. Like there've always been factions within those. When you go to Evo and you see, EG is representing EG is
rest in peace Echo Fox.
Like seriously, like there were so many different ways to build in those things, but it was also one, the fighting game community is still trying to figure out how to destigmatize itself from the bad boy mentality that it always kind of had, which to a certain extent is one of the best parts about it. It is wrestling, right? It's
a double-edged sword. It really
is. What was I going to say? The art of the pop-off is real, right? And it adds a layer to it, but it's this weird balance between either taking it too far or people who are from the outside looking in not understanding that it's not meant in malice, right? It's not a thing that is a detrimental thing to, the way we see it. In the same way that we see, the No Fun League sometimes having those parts of the conversation in there when they were trying to tamp down celebrations and all that kind of stuff. You see that translate into, feeling kind of sterile in the way that stuff works. What's going to be interesting, and I think I love the idea that you had there around how do you kind of build up, the storylines, you build up all that stuff. There are so many stories within the industry and within that community that are really either too personal or you can't make people who may not necessarily be good on camera learn how to be good on camera. You have to learn that's the thing, you have to learn at a certain point of how to play to the camera, how to play up all those things and do that kind of work. I think that one of the most interesting versions of that I would love to see is we had the Olympics get canceled last year.
Oh, I was looking forward to that.
And that was going to be huge for the fighting game community.
Yeah, it was the Intel Open, I think it was called, right? Street Fighter 5, and there was one other game, I think, maybe it was just Street Fighter 5, but I definitely, I had that circled big time.
And that was going to be madness. So even if you were to use Evo as the qualifier to get into the Olympics, Imagine that. So your top 3 in every category, every game, depending upon what game is going to wind up being in the Olympics, it'll probably just still be Street Fighter. I can't see the Olympics pulling in Mortal Kombat because of blood and gore.
Yeah, no, I doubt.
But I mean, it would be great though. It would be awesome. If it's just Street Fighter and you pull everyone basically takes up their country's banner during Evo, and you say, for qualifiers, if you want to get onto your national team, you got to come in the top 3. Like that would add such a layer to all this other stuff that we're seeing, that again, it makes that conversation much bigger, much broader, and it pulls in more stakes, not only for the competitors, but for the industry itself to say, we have lightning in a bottle here.
We do. And
we can figure out ways to promote this in a good way. Then we can really start to build that foundation that will make sure that all of our players who are at the top of their talents can get paid and can be profitable and can do all that work and feel like they have a space in the same ways that you see so many teams from other parts of the country and other parts of the world, have actual structure for their competitive spaces. So it's going to be wild to see what they do with this next Evo, especially if we don't have it in a physical space this year. If it goes back to online versions of Evo, I'm still not excited about that because it wasn't great. Well, they canceled it. Then
it never happened.
It never happened. They never happened.
It was supposed to happen Friday. That Wednesday is when the allegations came up about he who shall not be named. That was part of Evo. It was 2 days before, and they had to cancel it.
Right, that's what it was.
The Thursday, the day before, it was Saturday, and they canceled it on Thursday, something like that. But it was like 2 days away from happening, and they had to cancel it. So we don't know what Evo Online looks like yet. We'll find out in August. So far, Tekken 7, Guilty Gear Strive, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, Street Fighter 5 Champion Edition, with more games to be announced soon. There will be regional qualifiers, semifinals, a regional top 8, which will then lend into those online tournaments that count as the Evo Grand Finals. So my next question, I got 2 more questions for you before we get out of here. First, real quick one. What other games could they add? I don't know. I'm trying to think what other games might be improving their netcode. I think, or at least have current DLC going. I think Killer Instinct could be a lock because it's online. It's always been good.
It's always been good.
And the recent Twitch Rivals tournament with Maximilian performed very well. Mm-hmm. In the same regard, Ultimate Marvel 3 on Parsec, that Twitch Rivals with Maximilian was also very good, so you could see Marvel Baby coming back. I have a soft spot for Sam Show. I think Sam Show is really good, especially with the 2 partnership, the Hibiki and the Guilty Gear character coming soon. Is there any? Did I miss one? Is there anything? I
just for poops and giggles, I want to see them fighting herds.
Yes! Oh man, I was supposed to be there.
It's supposed to, right? I'm like, I want that. I want to see that on the front stage. I want to see it on the big stage, doing all that kind of stuff. The young cat who's a developer for that is a super humble dude. Really, really nice, really sweet kid, and would love to see his game or the team that's working behind it get the love that they deserve too in that space.
Absolutely, and I want to see that on Evo's stage just as much as I want to see Twitter's reaction to that on Evo's stage, because it would be awesome.
It's so good.
It was so good. But my last question here for you kind of goes into what we're talking about how esports, the fighting game community could grow thanks to this. There was a lot of concern in the initial announcement and in some local fighting game community like Facebook groups that I'm in about grassroots, where the top gets bigger, the bottom could get smaller. A lot of people worried about their locals or their regionals. Like big one out here in Philly is Big E Gaming. They have Summer Jam. They have NEC, Northeast Championships. People are worried about those going away. I am of the opinion that they're just going to be the same as they always was, or they always were. If Tekken World Tour wants to make some of them majors, that's what they're going to do. Combo Breaker's not going anywhere.
Right.
Final Round's not going anywhere.
No.
Do you see? Are you doom and gloom on this, or are you they're fine? It's just going to take them a while to get back to full strength.
No, they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing so many. I mean, again, like everything else that we've seen in the past year, everyone is evolving. Everyone is figuring out. Wait, no pun intended. No, in terms of evolution, but everyone is trying to figure out and has figured out good ways to hold good tournaments.
Yep.
The conversation you said exactly with Marvel and Parsec, that was not a thing that people were thinking about until the pandemic really happened. So the locals are still going to be there. People are still going to get together and find out ways to level up and to scrim and to and to lab together and do all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not going to happen. The beauty of it is now when people go into it, they can now see a future where they can actually start to get paid for this work.
That's right.
That's the part that is the most, because I think a lot of people forget that, like, there are so many parts of the fighting game community that is so run by the community itself, paying for it, trying to figure out ways to get money for pots, trying to figure out ways to get equipment, doing all that kind of stuff so that you can continue to have the kind of quality that you want for the fighting games that you play. And this will then give people the ability to network. This will give the ability for PlayStation to potentially help offset some of that financial cost for folks who are really doing brilliant work in the space. And I think it's really just going to be a big boon for everybody, where if you're at that space where you're like, this is going to take over my local, then that means you maybe need to rethink what your local looks like.
That's right.
Because I think those locals are going to be fine. No one's really talking to, PlayStation isn't coming in and saying no one can run a local anymore at this point because Evo was the thing, right? It'll be actually probably better because all those qualifiers that you would have for like Combo Breaker and for like all the other tourneys that are kind of out there, Jabali's CEO and all that kind of stuff, like all those now get a different layer of potential financial help, knowing that Evo is going to be healthy.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So I wonder how that's going to look for those kind of the big pillars, the kind of grand slam of the fighting game tournament scene. But I think that the locals are going to be fine. I think they'll be okay.
And also, let's not forget the Cannons, Tom and Tony, who were the only owners of Evo, now are part owners of Evo. They've got their own game coming too.
Yeah.
In Project L. So that could be, and if it's coming to PlayStation exclusively now and will be headlining Evo for years, and you bring in the League of Legends community, sky's the limit, if you ask me. We're only going up, and there will be grassroots tournaments in those, just like there will be huge tournaments. Between this news and the WUFL doing that Dragon Temple Mortal Kombat tournament where they basically turned the arena in Kiev into Shang-Tsung's temple. That was more of that, please.
Oh my God, more of that, amazing. Please. Oh my God, seeing Aquaman and Katana Prime
so cool,
full garb. I was so jealous.
Yeah, right. Oh my God,
so jealous. I was like, I would fly to Kiev to go do that. I don't care.
In a pandemic, of course,
right?
It's very irresponsible. But do you see those robes?
I'm just saying, I can sneeze into that robe. I can use it as a mask. It'll be fine.
Just means you have to take it home.
Yeah, basically.
You'll be recording your next episode of Spawn on me in this big robe. Don't ask.
Yeah, basically. Don't ask me.
This robe.
It's like, Kahlief, why are you wearing a CPAP? I'm like, don't worry about it. Leave me alone. I got my robe.
So, CPAP was not a term I expected to hear in this. So with that, I will let you go. You've had a long day. You've done a lot of good stuff. Tell us, Mr. Adams, about the places we can find you, the things we can see you in. Please highlight what you just came from, because that is a very, very worthy show that you are now a part of with some great people. Let the Philly area radio audience know where we can find you now that they have heard your voice and they want more.
Philly fam, thank you so much for having me out there on the East Coast. I miss the East Coast like you do not understand. I understand that you know what snow is and how to shovel it. I get it. It is reasonable. I know how it works. But I just came off of a show that is a collaboration between the esports team Cloud9 and Kaiser Permanente that is all about well-being and mental health. I'm co-hosting it with internet sensations Greg Miller, Game Over Greggy, and Alana Pierce. And we every couple of weeks, we do it bi-weekly. We'll have on some folks from Cloud9 and other folks within the industry to talk about ways to kind of better your mental health and have we have some industry professionals who are alongside with us if we ever need to ask a question or have them kind of add some input into the conversation. And it's been fantastic. We just had our season premiere today. You can catch those every other Thursday around 5:30 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Cloud9. If you want to catch me in the stuff that I do, Spawn on Me is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color in the video game industry. We've been doing the show for 8 years strong. We've had everyone from Aaron Greenberg to Sarah Bond from Microsoft on our show. We have everybody on the list. We're hopefully going to have some more Xbox folks on the show very, very soon. We're on all podcast platforms that you want to check out. Twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe every Wednesday night around 6 p.m. PST. And you can check out all of our stuff, our VODs on YouTube as well, youtube.com/SpawnOnMe. And we're trying to get to the 20K mark in terms of all of our accounts. So across Twitter, across Instagram, Spawn On Me Podcast on Instagram. So we're doing a lot of cool stuff. And if you were back in New York, maybe about a month ago, you might have seen my face on a big billboard in Times Square.
That's so cool.
Which was super wild and nuts, and it was fantastic and beautiful.
So cool.
It was super cool. It was super, super cool. I can't even lie. Did
you get to come over and see it, like live for yourself? Or?
Sadly, no, because no one's supposed to be flying. All the folks are flying. Stop flying. Yeah, the wonderful folks from Twitch. They were doing an activation for Black History Month, and they put me and a couple other amazing content creators on 4 billboards down in Times Square, which for me as a Bronx baby, born and raised in New York, it is something that is something that you think about as a bucket list thing. So getting able to do that at the ripe age of 42 is pretty amazing. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So old folks, you can still do this work. You can still rock it. You can still get in there and get your stuff in. So
any age,
any age. That's right, baby. That's right.
So, Mr. Kahlief, I thank you so much for your time. This was an awesome discussion. And if you will be willing to, we would love to have you back on to talk about things happening in the gaming world in the future. Mr. Adams, thank you.
Thank you so much.
For our last segment of the evening, I thought I would address one of my favorite times of the year as a sports fan, not just a sports video games fan, and that is March Madness. We didn't have March Madness last year. We did not have a round of 64 in college basketball, and sports fans like me around the world, they felt it. They felt the absence in their souls. Amidst everything else that was going on, the cancellation of March Madness was like the first gut punch, I think, as far as, not trivial, but like not the non-important things that were being canceled. Obviously, health and safety was the biggest gut punch, but as far as like the sports world was concerned, the loss of March Madness was the first, I think, really big deal when the pandemic was concerned. But we are back this year in 2021 with a full bracket, full slate of games starting Friday. Thursday night, there are some play-in games being played. I believe Drake is on right now, and MSU and UCLA are on later. That's when you know I'm recording. I have not seen MSU and UCLA yet. But I wanted to go through, since we're talking about March Madness, and talk about the games of college basketball and make a plea that they come back at some point. Because if you would believe it, as I mentioned with Sean Brace during our 4 o'clock segment on the Daily Ticket on Thursday, the last time we played a video game of college basketball was in the year of our Lord 2010. 11 years ago was the last time EA put out a college basketball game. Blake Griffin on the cover, wearing his Oklahoma jersey. That was the last one. So I wanted to go through and talk about some of the older college basketball games of yesteryear, talk about 2K versus EA, and that rivalry that went on for a couple of years. Talk about some one-offs that you may not remember, including 2 that were that also shared a name with one of the 2 of the biggest names in college basketball history for different reasons, and get into a little bit of the history of NCAA basketball. I thought it'd be fun little exercise to get you ready for March Madness. If you're listening to this right when the podcast goes down at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Friday, you can put this podcast on at 11 o'clock, listen to the whole thing. And then by the time you are done, you'll have heard the March Madness history, and you're ready for 2021. So let's go. And let's start with the aptly named NCAA Basketball. It was a Super Nintendo video game back in 1992. This was one of the first basketball games for a console to utilize a 3D perspective using the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 technology. That basically became the standard for later basketball video games, and this was the first one to use it. It was like experimental for the college game. It was also the first. The NCAA basketball was published the first NCAA basketball game, this one here, was published by Nintendo in North America and European Union. In Japan, it was published by HAL Laboratories, which would become known for Super Smash Bros. And Kirby. So it's a weird little thing that's going on there with this game. And believe it or not, it was called World League Basketball in Europe. And in Japan, it actually launched 6 months before it launched here. So Japan had American college basketball before America did. Very interesting little foibles here with this game. Had college teams from 5 of the major conferences, ACC, Big East, Big 8 at the time, SEC, and SWC, but all the players were incorrect. Not incorrect. All the players weren't real. The European game featured fictional professional teams located throughout the world, World League Basketball, and the Japanese release has its own fictionalized likenesses of NBA teams. So a lot going on in this first installment, but a very, very cool piece of history on the Super Nintendo. And then we had a couple of games, like I said, that were named after big icons in the world of college basketball, both on the Sega Genesis as well. First one was made by Time Warner Interactive, Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops, named after the broadcaster himself. It would implement his voice in certain places throughout the game and in little cutscenes. Used a 2-on-2 self-rotating 3D court, so if you were on offense, it would stay to your back, and if you were on defense, you would see your face. Interesting little college basketball game there. Nothing really to write home about. Scored pretty well at the time. Game Fan Magazine, for you older folks out there, gave it an 82 out of 100, whereas Sega Visions, a Sega-based magazine, gave it 3 out of 5. So, Vitale's commentary didn't go very well. Some of the outlets thought that the audio was awful and annoying and should eventually be turned off, but what are you going to do? But Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops, that's another relic to look for when you're going looking for NCAA basketball video games. And here's another one for the Genesis, this one by EA Sports, their first foray into college basketball, and the only EA college basketball game to ever be produced on the Sega Genesis. That is Coach K College Basketball, spun off of their NBA Live engine, came out in the year 1995. Only had 32 teams, in addition to 8 Classics teams. Some of the big names, or the current names, were Arizona, UCLA, UMass, Syracuse, and Kansas. And the 8 Classic teams were some of those teams that were had just had Classic players throughout all time, or at least players that were designed to be like those Classic players. Honestly, at the time, this game was considered to be very difficult, particularly in the rebounding and defensive strategy areas. It's almost as if the NBA Live engine was enhanced in the difficulty for this new college basketball game. But it's still got a very, very good reception by a lot of outlets. GamePro was very high of its praise. Both of the sports reviewers, when they had 2 sports reviewers of EGM, gave it 8 and 7 out of 10, respectively. Very, very good reception for this game, even though it was slightly difficult. But another great EA Sports basketball game for the Genesis. I was more partial to NBA Live myself, but same engine, same DNA. Very, very cool. And then you had, I don't know if many people know this, but in 1996, Iguana, and Acclaim, who were responsible for NBA Jam, also made a college version called College Slam. It was the same exact game with the same exact player models, everything looked the same, but it was college basketball instead of pro basketball. It included most of the major Division I colleges, with a few of them missing. But most of them were there, and you can see by the cover art, if you look it up, the scary basketball eating the rim and the net as their logo. It had any team you could think of, with the exception of like Tennessee and Notre Dame and Mississippi State. A couple other weird ones weren't there. But when you really dig deep into the game, as fun as it is, you can tell it's just college. It's just NBA Jam with a different coat of paint on it. Even in the sound effects were the same. They did the he's heating up and he's on fire from NBA Jam and stuff like that. It basically just seemed like they were trying to make 2 different versions of the same game, but include college teams for the college basketball fans. Was it good? Sure. Was it the same? Yes. So it was more derivative than anything else. Doesn't necessarily make it a bad game, but just not one that stood out on its own, and one that I wouldn't really recommend seeking out unless you really wanted to take a look for yourself. We did miss a Super Nintendo game from 1994, NCAA Final Four basketball. This is one I oddly remember renting and playing because it came out right when the tournament was happening, if I remember correctly. It was the top 64 college teams of the year, so all the teams that made the bracket and their official logos. And all it really had was playing random games and practice modes. Not a lot going on. Just looked very pretty. So not a lot to talk about there. And then for a while we were kind of quiet. Not a whole lot going on the college basketball front. And then Fox Sports came out with Fox Sports College Hoop 99 for the Nintendo 64. It came out around 1998. And it had 120 college basketball teams, could play 2 players in multiplayer, had the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship that you could play. It was the first college sports game for the Nintendo 64, but all you could really do was 2-player exhibitions or play a season mode, which was kind of didn't leave a lot to be desired. So it didn't get a lot of good scores from the outlets. An aggregate score right now of 55% on game rankings based on 8 reviews. One of them being GameSpot's 4.3 out of 10. One of them being Game Revolution's D. So not the best game to go back and look for from yesteryear as far as college basketball is concerned. Again, the well kind of dried up for a little bit, and then we had NCAA March Madness 1998, the first EA PlayStation March Madness game, the one that would start the franchise from 98 to 2010, came out in late 97, early 98. Tim Duncan in his Wake Forest gear on the cover. Oh, sorry, February 25th, 1998, so just before the tournament that year. Tim Duncan on the cover, highly regarded in comparison to the N64 Fox College Hoops, getting scores like 7.75, 88%, 5 stars from GamePro, so on and so forth. Definitely the first one, a game in its infancy, and had a lot that it had to fix before as the series went on, but it definitely set the table for the rest of the franchise. Then you can go through the entire, 99, 2000, all the way up to 2010. 09 is actually when the name changed from March Madness to NCAA Basketball because the copyright ran out or something like that. Looking at this list Wikipedia has of all the cover athletes, it is fascinating to me how this shakes out. So first of all, of the games that came out, so let's count here. It's a 98, 99, 2000, 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 09, 10. So that's 14 games from 98 to 2010. None of the cover athletes from those 14 titles were drafted lower than 6th. That being Shane Battier, drafted 6th overall in 2001 on the cover of the 2002 March Madness game. That fascinates me. There were 3 first overall picks, those being Tim Duncan, Kenyon Martin, and Blake Griffin. So the first and the last were first overall picks, bookending the entire series. The second overall picks were Steve Francis, and one that I'm going to get into in a little bit. Kevin Durant was also second overall the year he was on the cover. Had a couple third overalls, Carmelo Anthony and Adam Morrison. You had 2 fourth overalls, Anton Jameson and Drew Gooden. Ray Felton was the only 5th overall on the list, and then the 6th overall was Shane Battier of Duke. But of these players, only one was a center. The rest were mostly power forwards and small forwards with 2 point guards in Ray Felton and Steve Francis. The only center to be featured on NCAA and March Madness was 2005's coverman Emeka Okafor from UConn. That is an interesting little tidbit that I did not realize until I was investigating this. Sean Brace thought he had the answer when I mentioned it on his show, but he was thinking of the rival series that was happening around the same time, starting in 2003, and that was the 2K NCAA college basketball games, where the cover athletes were Jay Williams, and then it skipped a year, oddly, Although it didn't skip a year. It was called ESPN College Hoops in 2004. They took away the 2K4 for some reason and then brought it back. TJ Ford was on the cover of that one. And then 2K5, they brought the 2K back with the cover man being Josh Childress. 2006 cover man was Marvin Williams from UNC with Roy Williams standing behind him. 2007, JJ Redick in his Duke uniform, which, hurts me to my soul. I was a big Temple fan. I went to Temple and I watched JJ Redick play Temple at the Wells Fargo Center right in front of me, and we protected him pretty well. But Sheldon Williams down below just killed us. Fun fact about that game, in order to get under J.J. Redick's skin, the student section of Temple University printed out pictures of J.J. Redick's mom and her head and put them on a stick. So every time he fought he came to our end of the court, we would show pictures of his mom on a stick. And then whenever he shot free throws on our end of the court, someone found his awful MySpace poetry, printed it out, and we shouted it at him as he was shooting free throws. We're a lot of fun here in Philly. Even the college sports fans, we do some crazy stuff. But and then college basketball 2K8, college hoops 2K8, the last one in the 2K Sports line was covered by Greg Oden, another center. This is the one that Sean Brace thought was on the cover, but was not. It was Emeka Okafor was the one I was talking about. Greg Oden was the last cover man for College Hoops 2K8. But these two games went back and forth for a while. A lot of folks really liked the EA games. A lot of folks really liked the 2K games. 2K8, let's compare the last years that they were up against one another. 2K8 got a Metacritic score of 82 on PS3, 81 on Xbox 360. Not bad. Not bad at all things considered. That's a very good score. Whereas March Madness 08 with Kevin Durant on the cover was looking at a Metacritic of 67 on PS3 and 69 on Xbox 360. And yet the 2K games were the ones that were no longer able to be made. EA snapped up the NCAA license, and that was the end of that. So just like football, where a lot of people say NFL 2K5 is the best NFL game ever made, March Madness suffered a similar fate in that the EA license won out. But so that is the history of March Madness games in video games. There's probably a lot of memories there for you. I know for me, College Slam, I enjoyed, even though it was basically a clone. And then I played every March Madness game, I think, between 2006 and 2010, because I love doing brackets and simulating the tournaments, especially when the 360 came out and they would update the game with the actual bracket and you could play it as is. You'd be surprised how many times in that game you would simulate and 16s would beat 1s back when it was unheard of, before it actually happened. Some goofy stuff. But I hope you enjoyed this little walk down March Madness memory lane as far as games are concerned. I hope you enjoy the tournament as that coming on this weekend. With that, this is episode number 40 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio. I want to thank Kahlief Adams from Spawn on Me for joining me to talk about Sony and Evo. When that news broke, I had to talk to somebody, and he is definitely a good source of information there. So please go listen to Spawn on Me when you're done listening to this. That is an excellent podcast with an excellent host and excellent guests, and they deserve every ear that listens to them. So please support them. Please continue to support them if you do so already. And I am now signing off, so I hope you have a great weekend and a great week, and I will talk to you again next Friday as usual. Thank you so much for listening. I love you all. Good night.